So by way of a very, very brief introduction of myself, and before I get this going, my name is Benjamin. I'm the founder and director of two organizations. The purpose of our convening today is to discuss the New State Solution. The New State Solution, as was entitled, is a conflict-ending alternative to the status quo. It's important to note that this solution emanates from Israelis who have dedicated their lives, the best of their talents, and their abilities to the defense of the state of Israel and all who dwell within her borders. They merit being listened to, they merit being learned from, and they are here to impart the best of their knowledge by way of any question that you ask and the response thereto. So let me delve right in about the New State Solution. The New State Solution calls for an opportunity to view anew the Israel-Palestinian conflict and how it might be resolved. What I want to begin with is an understanding of some of the pitfalls that are attendant to the two-state solution. Incidentally, if you can't see from there, they are within the booklets that you have. So the ladies at the front, or feel free, if you're comfortable doing so, I'm comfortable, you can turn your chairs around, just feel free to do that. So what you're seeing here is a map of the state of Israel. These maps were not selected for any political purpose whatsoever. They're just to illustrate the points being discussed. On the right-hand side of the map, west of the Jordan River, you can see the area known as Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank in lightened colors. On the left-hand side of the map, astride the coast of the Mediterranean Sea toward the southwest of the state of Israel, as you look at it, you can see the Gaza Strip. The two-state solution at its core, of course, calls for contiguity between Judea and Samaria, for a Palestinian state that would be established there, and the Gaza Strip. A quick point about that: one cannot bring about contiguity between Judea and Samaria and the Gaza Strip without breaching the contiguity of north from south Israel. A cursory view of the geography at play reveals that to be the case. Feel free, by way of your questions, to raise any initiatives that you may have heard about, such as tunnels or overland passes. From the position of defense and security, what you're viewing now is a topographical map. As you look at the topographical map, again in the area delineated by white west of the Jordan River, you see that the high ground upon which would be built a Palestinian state in the two-state paradigm would leave Israel not only being overlooked by the Palestinian state, who would hold the topographical advantage, but also they would be overlooking the lowlands of the state of Israel, approximately in the area of the Gush Dan, which you can see colored in green, abutting the Mediterranean Sea, abutting our coastline. There I'm talking about cities such as Tel Aviv, for example, and our main industrial population and collection of sites. In addition to that, a Palestinian state built there on the hills of Judea and Samaria would render the width of the state of Israel not more than 9 miles at its narrowest point, something that I'm sure most of you are aware of. What you may not be aware of is that General Bivy jogs 9 miles about 3 times a week. So consider that in real-time context. Other things that are attendant to the two-state solution, looking over at the map. In this era, in this epoch of failing states in the Middle East, were the Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria to fail, even with the best of intentions undergirding it, we would face a potentially pernicious corridor of states to our east, beginning in Afghanistan and Pakistan and moving to Iran, Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon. You can even potentially throw Turkey in there if you wish to. And again, not more than 9 miles from the coastline of the state of Israel. Our generals view that as an untenable situation. Most importantly, with regard to the two-state solution, this is why we refer back to this map, no solution currently on the table directly and immediately tackles what has been viewed for a long time as an intractable problem, namely how to resolve the situation in the Gaza Strip, however one chooses to define that situation. The closest that we have come to hearing a clear-cut policy with regards to the Gaza Strip has been stated by former Secretary of State John Kerry, where he said in his final address on the issue, there are solutions for the Gaza Strip, there are options, we can talk about those later. That is about as specific as anybody has moved on the issue of the Gaza Strip. What you're seeing now is as we enter into the new state solution, we actually believe in bringing about a paradigm shift here. In bringing about a paradigm shift, beginning with converting the Gaza Strip from being an intractable problem into an integral part of the solution. I want to repeat that. We call to convert the Gaza Strip from being an intractable problem to being an integral part of the solution. What it is that we're seeking to bring about and what it is that we're championing today is the establishment of a free, independent, sovereign, thriving state for the Palestinian Arabs that would be anchored in the Gaza Strip with contiguity into the Sinai Peninsula. If you look to your screen on this side of the room, the top left image is that of the Gaza Strip. The image next to it, ignoring that triangle is not relevant to the purpose of this presentation. The image next to it shows the Gaza Strip in the context of the landmass of the Sinai Peninsula, and the image beneath it shows the Sinai Peninsula in the context of mainland Egypt. What we want you to be aware of is that unlike in the two-state paradigm, right here you can see that there is land that gives at least the opportunity for a viable state to be established. I want to also now return to the issue of topography and talk about defense just for a moment. Here you have the same topographical map to which I referred you earlier in the presentation. It is the exact inversion in the new state paradigm to the paradigm that we are concerned about in the two-state scenario, meaning that if you look at the image here on the screen at the moment, the area where we would establish the state for the Palestinian Arabs with contiguity to the Sinai Peninsula is actually bordered by the high ground of the Negev desert. You can see that Israel would therefore hold the high ground, the high mountains. It would also overlook the lowlands of the Palestinian state in the new state, and by way of the territory afforded us by way of the Negev, the state of Israel, in case the new state should become a belligerent force, would have the ability to defend itself. It would be given and granted the necessary strategic depth to repel any threats. The gentleman by whom I'm joined are very clear-eyed about the notion of defensibility. So that you know what undergirds as well the idea of the new state solution, what you're seeing here is the coastline of Tel Aviv. Everybody on this stage believes that the coastline of the new state in the Sinai Peninsula can go even beyond what is being depicted here. It, of course, comes with a harbour, with an airport, with the opportunity for trade, commerce, hospitality, and tourism. This slide, the penultimate slide, is a satellite image taken overlooking the Sinai Peninsula at night. You see above the Sinai Peninsula the densely populated areas, again west of the Jordan, of the state of Israel, of Judea and Samaria, and even of the Gaza Strip. But what I want you to notice is this. The Egyptian population continues to this day to build its civilization, its cities and its infrastructure along the river Nile. There is a real interest at play for the Egyptians that I'll allow our experts to talk more about, not without the consideration that right now the Ethiopians are developing one of the largest dams in the world, which will severely restrict the amount of water flowing toward Egypt. What you see there, ladies and gentlemen, if it was to be encapsulated in one word, is potential. There is the potential to build in a sparsely populated area of the world a state that would be free, thriving, sovereign for the Palestinian Arabs. The final slide that I want to refer you to before I introduce the gentleman here is a statement made by Secretary of State John Kerry in his final address, official address on the issue before he shuffled off the international stage. He might be back, I hear. The rumor is he might be coming back. But it says here, quote, "The United States is deeply committed to securing Israel's future as a Jewish and democratic state. We are also committed to an independent, viable Palestinian state where Palestinians live with freedom and dignity. The only way to achieve that is through a negotiated solution that creates two states for two peoples living side by side in peace and security." We submit to you that the new state solution is absolutely adherent to that description. It merely requires that we reimagine the borders along which the state would be built. It would still be two states for two peoples living side by side in security. I want to now, before I turn it over to General Bivy, to tell you who we have on the stage with us. The gentleman here is Brigadier General Amira Bivy. He is the principal of the New State Solution. His last position was that of Chief Auditor for the entire defense establishment of the State of Israel. That's the military, the civilian sector, and the intersection between. He was the commander of the School of Combat Engineers, Deputy Division Commander of the Gaza Strip, which is relevant to this issue, Brigade Commander of the Egyptian border, relevant to this issue, and the aide-de-camp to Lieutenant General Chief of Staff Moshe Ya'alon, Bogi Ya'alon. To my far left here, I have General Schmaltz Oka, who concluded his service in the Israel Defense Forces, again at the rank of Brigadier General. He had the opportunity to lead and to command the Israeli forces in the Gaza Strip, in the West Bank as well, also known as the Judea and Samaria Division, and in the security zone in Lebanon. He was the commander of the division of the Gaza Strip, it bears noting, when there was only one division, and this was the commander. It means that this individual is particularly familiar with the attitude in the Palestinian street, because being a general is to a great extent about avoiding war as well. So he spoke to them, he interacted with them, they were his interlocutors. He's well placed to speak on the issue. His last position was that he served as a Deputy Director General, Head of Directorate for Production and Procurement, again in the Israeli Ministry of Defense. To my right here is Major General Gershon HaKohen in the reserves. Major General Gershon HaKohen was the commander of the National Defense College. He was the commander of the Northern Corps, commanding 4 divisions, numbering approximately 100,000 troops. He was also the commander of the strategic exercise of the General Staff for 2 decades and remains an advisor in that capacity to this day during his reserve duty. He also commanded, and this is an important point which should inform the questions today, he commanded the troops responsible for the disengagement from the Gaza Strip when he was a Brigadier General, which was undertaken during the premiership of Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. We also have Brigadier General Nehemiah Sokal. Brigadier General Nehemiah Sokal is the immediate past Chief of Staff for the technological and logistical branch of the Israel Defense Forces. Among other things, he is the individual who got the phone call to identify and implement the counter-tunnel technology that is now being implemented and that you're hearing about along the Gaza Strip. He was also responsible for the coordination and deployment of the Israel Defense Forces, air, land and sea in times of peace, in times of war, and in times of disaster readiness. We are among very, very esteemed company. I'll ask General Bivy to supplement for just a moment or two, and then we will take questions from the floor. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Benjamin. Looking at the two-state solution, we're talking about the Palestinians wanting to have sovereignty, and the Israelis mainly dealing with security. And when talking about the two-state solution, what we're seeing today is actually a situation where there is no two-state solution. There is a three-state solution. The state of Gaza, under Hamas rule, completely different entity today from the Palestinian Authority in Judea and Samaria. And actually, although this has become a huge change in the situation, what people are doing today is completely ignoring the fact that Gaza is out of the game completely, and everybody is focusing in Judea and Samaria. In Judea and Samaria, when looking at the security concerns of Israel, we see that we can't really give the Palestinians real sovereignty. We are talking about an entity that will be completely demilitarized. We are talking about an entity that will be surrounded by Israel, because Israel intends to stay in the Jordanian Valley. We're talking about major Israeli population remaining in Judea and Samaria, and actually a situation where all the cities are completely mixed, Palestinians and Israeli cities, really close to each other, sometimes hundreds of meters, sometimes a bit more. This is not a state. I mean, people use the term Palestinian state, but when you really go into it and try to understand the details, there is no real offer for the Palestinians to build a really viable state, open with airspace, with the airport. Of course, this area is landlocked. They have nowhere to go. and they will always cross Israeli borders. Talking about the military, we intend to continue and operate in this area because it's crucial for Israel's security. Everybody in Israel understands that. So this is a zero-sum game. We're trying to divide a really, really small area with the width of only 43 miles and try to build two viable states with a large diaspora, fast-growing states, in such a small area. This is a non-starter. It hasn't worked and probably won't work.
So what we will do is we will now take questions from the floor by show of hands. Feel free to ask us about Egypt. This is connected to the camera. Feel free to ask us about Egypt. Feel free to ask us about Jerusalem. Feel free to ask us about security, defense, offense, whatever it is. We're open to your questions and we'll refer it to the appropriate expert. Does anybody have a question? Yes, sir. Could you state your name, please, and if you represent an organization?
Josh London with the Zionist Organization of America. Fundamental question. Since to date, Palestinian Arabs have shown no actual interest in peace, either for statehood or anything else, in actual fact on the ground, regardless of what the interlocutors periodically say for the West. So what makes you think that they would go for the dream of an actual state when it's not?
Got the question. So the question was, what makes us think that this would be accepted or that somebody within the Palestinian community would go for this idea?
Regarding the situation right now and regarding the familiar paradigm that really insisting about two-state solution, as everyone knowing, really justifying your question. What we are trying to offer here is a paradigm shift, not only in taking another perspective, not to be constrained as it was from 1937 to find a solution within the borders of the narrow Israel between the Jordan and the sea. What is offered here is a paradigm shift regarding the whole framework. Maybe what is absolutely not at all going to begin to work in the paradigms that going again and again to found itself in dead end could be just re-estimated, reconsidered, not as a solution for the Israeli-Palestinian problem, but as a solution for the miserable people in Gaza, that everyone trying now to solve it. And what is really the idea? It is to create an economical change from the center of gravity of the Palestinian state located now in Judea and Samaria, and letting the people in Gaza to be just a side effect of the solution, to be the center of gravity of new effort. Maybe by that, not in order to save Israel, but in order to save the Palestinians, it could work.
We just take one more. You've really started a discussion here. General Oka would like to supplement that very quickly, and then we'll move on to the next question.
I would like to add something. What is the alternative? We try to initiate, it is the first step, a new idea. Because till now we are talking only about two-state solution. Nothing happened. We try to initiate a lot of things, like to withdraw from the Gaza Strip, withdraw from the Lebanon, from the security zone. Nothing happened. So we try to do something new, and it's really the first step, and we know that we have to go a long way with this initiative. And if we begin this step asking ourselves, what is the opinion of the Palestinian? From my experience, our experience, they really succeed in losing every opportunity to change their situation. So we are not asking ourselves in the beginning what will be their opinion. We try to initiate, and if you check this kind of initiative, you can see that there are a lot of advantages for the Palestinians. Thanks.
We'll move to the next question, if we may, by show of hands. Yes, sir. Can you introduce yourself and the organization you're from?
Michael Levinson of the Middle East Forum. I assume that Egypt is going to give up quite a bit of territory for an expanded Gaza would want some sort of territorial compensation. Is there some part of the Negev that under this plan would be given to Egypt? Or what's your idea about territorial compensation?
So the question's been asked, what is the idea about territorial compensation? I'll give that to the principal and to General Ben Amir. Okay.
We believe that even without compensation, Egypt might agree to give at least 10% of the Sinai Peninsula, which is an area as big as Judea and Samaria and Gaza together. The Sinai Peninsula is 60,000 kilometers squared. Judea and Samaria and Gaza, it's not even 6,000. So we're talking about 10%, maybe a bit more. The situation in Egypt is terrible. This country is on the verge of collapse. They have much more basic interests that this initiative can meet than keeping an area which they already don't control, because it's controlled today mainly by ISIS. The world has a lot to offer to Egypt in this sense, and we believe that this is a very, very good deal for the state of Egypt, even without getting land from Israel.
If I may just supplement what the generals said, sir, it's instructive that President Obama, when first he went to the Middle East, he traveled to Cairo, the capital of Egypt. When President Trump first went to the Middle East, he went to Saudi Arabia. That is very demonstrative of the shift the generals are alluding to. The second thing, and this is absolutely key to be understood, the land would not be allocated to the state of Israel. The land is allocated for a Palestinian Arab state. That means that it is today that the land is being given, and therefore reduces to a great extent this notion of tit for tat in terms of exchanges of territory. We'll take the next question. Yes, I promised you. I know who you are, but let everyone else know who you are, please.
Sarah Stern, the Middle East Truth. One has to appreciate the bravery and courage of trying to finally make a paradigm shift that you're embarking upon. But how does one erase the quarter of a century of brainwashing of the Palestinian population that all of Israel will one day be Palestine, and they feel that they have a foothold in Palestine? And how will you do this? Will you transfer them into another?
Okay, so just to repeat the question so that everybody heard it, I'm going to move that to General Hakohen, but just so everybody heard the question, essentially Sarah asked how would we really cope with the quarter of a century of anti-Israel brainwashing among elements of the Palestinian Arabs. And she also finished off with a question about, are we going to transfer them? So I just want to make a quick point before I move it to you, General. Undergirding this plan, and you can feel free to ask about this if you like, undergirding this plan, there is an absolute rejection of the idea of forced transfer of any population. Okay, this plan, some people have asked us in previous presentations, where are our red lines? That is one such red line. I'd be happy to delineate others, but there will be no forced transfers of any population. And I'm going to turn this to General Hakohen, please, to answer.
What you ask is really a problem. And we are not really thinking that in a chain of events, by engineering, we can bring a solution to that anxiety. Of course not. What we can do is something else. It is to offer them an opportunity. Anyhow, even 100 years ago, a lot of people that considered to be today Palestinians immigrated from Egypt, from Syria, to British Mandate Palestine because it was a center of economical growth. They came to Tel Aviv to build, they came to Jaffa, and the same is what we are trying to offer here, a new center of economical gravity that will be a temptation for young people to go, because a lot of investment could really tempting them to come in the same way that they tempted to come to Kuwait or to Dubai. And it could be really the beautiful new Riviera in the East Mediterranean. Maybe they will insist that all Palestinians belong to them, but meanwhile, they could really join the Zionistic project trying to make the desert bloom in Sinai, and something else will happen, maybe.
I'd also like to just make one point, Sarah. It's very important, not necessarily for any individual, but for the broader community to know this, and maybe General Bivy can develop this a bit more. The Palestinian Arabs are not monolithic. We believe them to be no more monolithic than the people of Israel. There are people of Israel who do not dwell in the state of Israel, but pray sedulously towards it 3 times a day from the diaspora. There are others who move to Israel and stay in Jerusalem, would never leave Jerusalem. There are others who live in Tel Aviv and would never move to Jerusalem. And we believe that it's the very same for the Palestinian Arabs. Yes, there are those who are religiously assigned to the land. We also believe that there are those who would much rather take part in, for example, the building up of a tourist hub along the Mediterranean coast. And that informs everything that we do. If you'd like to supplement that.
Yes, when we said at the beginning that nobody is dealing with Gaza. And Gaza is ruled by Hamas, and the Hamas education towards jihadism and terrorism is well known. And part of the idea is dealing with the Hamas. We believe that the United States should lead a coalition, as it's doing already in Syria, in Iraq, shift a bit the focus to this area and deal with ISIS in the Sinai Peninsula, and ISIS is today penetrating also to Gaza, and deal also with the Hamas. We need to deal with the Hamas because in 10 or 15 years we'll have no one to talk to. They are all extremely radicalized from the age of 5. Talking about Judea and Samaria, since we are talking about a new state in Gaza and the Sinai Peninsula, this gives us real opportunities to deal with the education of young Palestinians, also in Judea and Samaria. When looking at the success with the Israeli Arabs, we live together in the state of Israel, and it works very well. We believe we can copy this success also to Judea and Samaria.
Thank you. Next question. Yes, sir.
Sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, and there's no population transfer in the future, would Palestinian children born in a place like Ramallah have Israeli citizenship the way they do now and say, well, Faham?
So I'm going to refer that question to General Oka.
So all the possibilities are under the context of the new state solution. There is a whole range of possibilities regarding Judea and Samaria. I will mention only 3 of them. First of all, we can maintain Palestinian autonomy along the current parameters in Judea and Samaria, what we call area A, or zones A and B. And in area C, where Palestinians live also today, there are some tens of thousands. We can give them Israeli citizenship. It's possibility. Another possibility is granting Israeli residency, but not citizenship, in all of the area of Judea and Samaria. And another possibility is providing enough people choose to move by their own will to the new state, giving them or granting all remaining Palestinians in Judea and Samaria full Israeli citizenship. It's also a possibility. And there are a lot of different variations regarding these possibilities.
Other questions? Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Usually when talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, people tend to say that there are only 2 options: the 2-state solution and the 1-state solution. And the 1-state solution is described as a solution that will destroy the Jewish nation because there won't be Jewish majority. But what people are doing when talking about a one-state solution is putting into this equation the 2 million Palestinians in Gaza. Here, this is a different scenario. We're talking about anchoring this new state in Gaza, and therefore they are not part of the equation. It's 2 million people we're saving from the really bad situation they are at the moment, and enlarging this area and building a new state. So we're focusing only on the population in Judea and Samaria. Theoretically, even if we would give everyone citizenship now, we'll still have a Jewish majority, but I think that most Israelis will probably prefer having a Palestinian autonomy in the major cities. But this is also an opportunity to bring in Israeli infrastructure, build new roads, bring more Israeli firms into Judea and Samaria. Israel desperately needs workers, and Palestinians desperately need jobs. And today, every firm that goes into Judea and Samaria immediately is filled with workers from the Palestinian Authority. So there is a real win-win situation in this sense.
I'd like I was going to refer to you, General, actually, to supplement.
I can really understand the question about the West Bank. It's an important question. But I think that the main problem today, and that's what's going today, it's what's going in the Gaza Strip, about the population in the Gaza Strip. How we can solve the humanitarian problem in Gaza. As you know, the two critical points today in Israel from our side, from the Israeli side, is the security problem. It's a very sensitive issue. And the second problem is the humanitarian situation in Gaza Strip. If we are not going to solve this problem, so we are facing the next war in the Middle East. So dealing with the West Bank in this first stage is a very important question. We cannot escape from dealing with it, but I think that we have to solve the problem of the Palestinian in the Gaza Strip soon as possible. And that's the main issue today. After that, we'll speak about the West Bank. Mm-hmm. Thanks.
We'll take a question from Mike Lowenstein, and I'll come to you, sir. Mike, please.
Mike Lowenstein, Baltimore Jewish Community. Mention was made of the fact that the Palestinians are not monolithic and that you're not asking the Palestinians. But have there been any conversations with would-be future leaders of the current PA, El Fatah, so that there could be some beginning of groundswell of interest in this alternative two-state solution?
The question's been asked about what is the stage of the conversation with the Palestinians that General Cohen would like to answer.
Sometimes the question is not only who will lead, but who are the people he is going to lead. And the people in Gaza and people in Judea and Samaria traditionally are different people. They are not even getting married together. Culturally, they are different. And what we are trying to offer here is a solution to those who are living in Gaza because they are really suffering. And what is really important to emphasize, there is a very beautiful metaphor or phrase in Arabic saying, La Jud ila bil mawjud, it means there is no good as what there already is. And if we are looking about what already emerged in the situation, we have two models, one in Judea and Samaria, one in Gaza. In Judea and Samaria, there is daily coexistence and daily friction within Israelis, between Israelis and Palestinians. In Gaza Strip, the model is binary separation. In a way, it is better for what would be considered as human rights regarding all national self-recognition, but they are suffering from very low condition of life quality. On the other side, in the Judean Samaria model, they are really frustrating with Israeli, with prosperity, with Israeli prosperity. They are working within Israelis. Their houses are much better. Look about what's going on in Jerusalem. There is coexistence everywhere, in hotels, in hospitals, in the streets, and this could be a very lovely model with potential. So just by regarding and being aware about what is the difference of two models, it is giving the potential to convince people in Gaza that there is a new opportunity in the west side of Gaza, it means in Sinai.
Other questions, if we have? Yes, sir. Dan.
Dan Pollock from the Zionist Organization of America also. I really commend you for the innovative thinking involved in this proposal, but it seems to require a lot from the world. So implicit in this, I guess, is that the Europeans and Americans will be interested in financing it in order to make this Gaza entity a real economic magnet. And secondly, it sounds like, and I just want to make this explicit, there might be a need for some help from Western militaries to impose this idea on Hamas. So I wanted to ask both of those questions about how that will fly. I mean, after all, here in the United States Congress, there are some isolationist tendencies.
Got you then. So just for the purposes of the camera, the question was asked. Basically, who's going to finance it? Actually, Dan, we were hoping we could put it on your credit card. We'll talk later. That was why we gave you lunch, after all. And the second question is with regard to the participation of Western militaries, essentially, in terms of moving this forward, particularly with a focus on Hamas. So I'll refer that to General Bivy.
Well, the question you raised is, does the United States or Europe have such an interest to be involved in what we are doing here? I'll start with the Europeans. As we said before, in Egypt live quarter of the Arabic world, 100 million people. 30 million of them are starving. In the last few years, we started to see flow of Egyptians starting to move with boats and ships towards Europe. So it's only a matter of time, if we don't start dealing with the situation in Egypt, that Europe will see flow of millions of Egyptians immigrating to Europe. So here there is an opportunity to do something preemptive and start dealing with this situation, and also gaining a lot. We'll gain the solution for the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, we'll gain regional stability, we'll gain peace between Israel and all the Arab Sunni countries. This is a very big deal for everybody. Now, mind you that Egypt is a crucial country. It sits on the Suez Canal. All the world trade goes through the Suez Canal. If this place is destabilized, if Egypt will collapse, if ISIS will gain more control in the Sinai Peninsula, this is very bad news for world economy. And it concerns everybody. It concerns the Chinese, it concerns India, it concerns Russia, the States, Europe, everybody. So we think that there should be real interest to solve this issue, stabilize Egypt, stabilize Israel and the Palestinians in this sense.
Other questions, if there are?
Yes. On the military? Anybody want to talk about the
Oh,
military?
yes.
One thing about money. There is a lot of money going all the time to the Palestinians. So there is money flowing all the time. The question is, where is it going to? It's going to finance terror. It's going to private bank accounts. And all we are saying is very simple. Take this money, invest it in a completely different way. Let's invest in infrastructure in the North Sinai Peninsula. I can tell you, sir, that everywhere we talk about this solution, we have people from the private sector seeing this as a real opportunity to invest. And once you see people in the private sector getting interested in this idea, this is good news. It means it's not only going to be financed by the UN or the United States, but there is a large interest in the private sector in investing in this area.
General, did you want to add something? No? Okay. Other questions, if there are? Just before, pardon? Who's coming? I just wanted to, yeah, go for it, Amira.
Two quick questions. The first on Egypt. We've heard them deny numerous times in recent years that they would ever agree to give up parts of Sinai. This idea has been talked about, and they say that they disapprove of it. Are they lying? Are they just doing it for PR? Why do they keep saying that they would never agree? Second question on the Palestinians. We know that northern Sinai is an area where there is a very strong presence of ISIS. The Egyptians have been failing to fight the ISIS insurgency there. Do you expect the Palestinians to be able to defeat it? And if not, how can they have a state in that area?
Excellent questions, and we are aware about these difficulties. The only hope I can really deliver here is that by paradigm shift, we are believing that something that was absolutely impossible in the familiar paradigm could be possible in rearranging the whole attitude. What it means? Everyone today is speaking about the new idea of Palestinian-Israeli agreement that coming to be supported by regional arrangement with Saudi Arabia, etc. Here we are speaking not only about political support, we are speaking about support by land. It could really come out to be not a kind of collaboration with the Israelis by Egypt, but a kind of rearrangement of the whole region. Why it is necessary? Not because of the Israeli-Palestinian directly unsolved problem, but because of new interests. Therefore, we must understand the potential of declaring a new paradigm. It happened if we are trying. I spent a lot of years in philosophy of science about paradigm shift, paradigm revolutions in science, like Einstein revolution, for example. He changed the main axioms. Maybe we can really lead to changing axioms.
General Oka.
I would like to add something. First of all, give my warm regards to your father. He is the son of a general in the Israeli military. And secondly, I'm really very surprised about your question. You can say, you can speak in Hebrew. You know, you asked if the Egyptian is a liar or something like that. It's really a very surprised question because I don't know even a person that is a liar in the Middle East. In the Middle East, there is no liars. So the question, you know, really, I'm very surprised. What do you expect that Egypt will say formally that they want to give a piece of land to another country? How they can convince their own people to do it? So this isn't a formally statement. So if you take this statement, so who is the liar? In Middle East, there is no liars. Everybody believes in his own, you know, he judges himself and nobody is a liar. I'm cynic, but that's the reality. And we are talking about to defeat ISIS. You know, the Middle East have another games, another players. I believe, if they want to defeat them, they can do it because Egypt is a very, very strong, they have a strong military. You can ask the same question about Israel and Hezbollah. So there are a lot of principle, a lot of priorities, how much they want to put in this issue. It's disturbing them, but there are a lot of things underground and unfamiliar, and that's why I wanted only to add this kind of things, because in the new idea, I'm sure that in the beginning, everybody will reject it. Everybody formally will say that no chance. But you have to look at it as a startup. It's a beginning, and that's what we're trying to do.
General Bivy will take the last word on this point. Yeah.
I would like to answer really shortly. In international relations, like in business, if you want to know if you can cut a deal or not, you need to look upon interests, not upon positions. It doesn't matter what people or leaders say. It matters what are the real interests behind it. If I was Egyptian and I would understand that maybe there is such a deal going on, I will try to get as much as possible. And at the beginning, I will say no, because I want to maximize what I'm going to get. So if the world, the United States, offers this to the Egyptians at the beginning, they say no. It doesn't mean they don't want to. It means they are conducting, they are doing business. Okay, we sat and thought a lot about what are the interests, and I think that the big news are that unlike the two-state paradigm, where this paradigm doesn't really meet core interests for Israelis or Palestinians or anybody else, in this scenario, there is an intersection of real core interests in all the parties. It might change in a few years. We need to be timely about it. We need to move now. This is an opportunity to move forward and have this deal done.
I want to take the last question, and then what I'm going to do is we're going to hang out here with you guys for informal conversation. So we're going to take one last question that I'm going to take the liberty of asking, because it's important that you hear it. And then we'll just make some concluding, very quick concluding statements. So I'm turning to you, General Sokal, because I last had the privilege of escorting you in the United States when you went on a campus tour and you were still in service. And you expressed in the midst of a very intimate conversation in a private residence why it is that you're so committed to bringing about an end to the Israel-Palestinian conflict. And I think that while everybody here is hearing from a number of esteemed generals, it's important also to hear from the human voice that informs everybody sitting up here at the stage. So would you just explain, there was this connection between the tunnels and tunnels. Could you just explain and let people hear from an Israeli general what it is that informs you as you go through this, this series of briefings and initiatives?
First of all, I served my country for the last 30 years, and I want to strengthen the idea that the two-state solution or plan is not relevant anymore. I live in the 6th floor in an apartment at a city that is called Kfar Saba. From my balcony, I can see Kalkilia, which is a Palestinian city that is part of the A zone. And as was said before, this is a mix of Israelis and Palestinians in the very close cities and a very dense area. And I think there isn't any possibility of two viable countries live in this situation.
Pause for a moment. I want them to refer to something here because it's important. If you want to see a visual manifestation of that, please refer to page 24 in your booklets. It's exactly the city that the general's referring to.
And as I said, I served my country for the last 30 years, and my son today is a K9 combat soldier at the IDF. And he's still doing what I've done for the last 30 years. And I presume that if we will not do nothing regarding this situation, his son is also going to do it. And I think it's terrible. And therefore, I'm very committed to the change of paradigm and the new thinking about a solution that was raised up by this idea of the new state solution.
I have a friend, he is an architect. He told me that the potential must be found in the open space, whether it is the sea for the city or the desert for Gaza Strip. It is really a huge potential waiting to someone to do something with it.
So I'm going to just conclude the proceedings with a couple of thoughts. The first thing is that while the sentiments of all of the generals here are absolutely correct and accurate, as somebody who moved to the State of Israel and who did so in no small part, because of the unabated growing anti-Semitism that is sweeping the continent of Europe and certainly into the United Kingdom, the country of my birth, and the country in which I grew up. I'm sure a great many in this room are deeply appreciative and never lamenting of the fact that there are those able to defend the country of my birthright, the State of Israel, who've done so ably and whose children are doing so ably. And I can tell you that all of our people in the diaspora and within the borders of the State of Israel are deeply, deeply indebted to all of you and those that you send forward in your good name. So that's the first thing. We appreciate it. The second thing that I wanted to say is I think it's very, very important that as the conversation continues, first of all, any one of these individuals on the stage is happy to give you their business card. Okay? Forward your questions. Do not let the conversation drop when you depart from this discussion today. Keep the the conversation alive. I can assure you that we will be back. You will be hearing about this more because this is a proposition that emanates from the State of Israel, and the State of Israel exists so that the Jewish people have a voice in their own future. So there's nothing more appropriate than the people of Israel putting forth an idea that they believe serves the interests of the peoples in the area and in the region. If not for that, I don't know what it's for. Do stay in touch. The final thing that I wanted to say is this. As you turn this over and as you take the pamphlets, please do take the pamphlets and the books with you. Know that they are only a starting point for the conversation. But know this, anybody who continues to endorse the two-state solution, I think has to be made to answer the following questions. Question number one would be, the two-state solution, is there evidence-proof precedent that it can be implemented and succeed, or does the evidence point to the very contrary? That's question number one. Question number two, is it practicable, meaning quite simply, geographically, can it be done? Or is the answer to that other than a yes? Question number three, if the two-state solution is implemented and does not meet with success, even if implemented with the best of intention at its core, but does not meet with success, would you be willing yourselves to live with the potential outcome of that failure? Or is that something that is readily reserved exclusively for the people of Israel and the residents of the State of Israel and the citizens of the State of Israel? Question number four, the penultimate question, if the two-state solution is implemented and it meets not with success but with failure, would you be willing, and not you, but I say the international community, of course, would the international community be willing to have their children live with the consequences of that failure? Or is that reserved exclusively for the children of the State of Israel? And the final question that I ask is this: when championing the two-state solution, are you truly, truly calling for the establishment of a free, independent, sovereign, viable state for the Palestinian Arabs, or are you calling for a sub-state? And if the answer to all five of those questions is not a resounding yes, if you're not calling for a state where any Palestinian can grow up with the aspiration to become president, if the answer to all five of those questions is not a resounding yes, I humbly suggest that you must move on to another solution, because it's inappropriate, of course, to impose upon the people of Israel a standard that no other people would be asked to accept. We have commended a viable solution. It's imperfect, it needs to be refined, it's a start. If you work with us and you hear about it and you continue to learn about it, I assure you we will be moving towards refinement of that. We're a very, very capable team here. I feel humbled to be able to sit in the company of all of them. I again distinguish our principal for being here with us and the team that he has helped us to put together, and all of the individuals on this side of the podium. Thank you again to the president of our organization and to our team, and we look forward to continuing the dialogue and are adjourned. Thank you very much.